Hello, my dear friend, and welcome to the Spiritually Engineered Podcast, where we take a deep dive into the human experience from a spiritual perspective. Come on in, and I invite you to stay. So, in today's episode, I wanted to talk about something that I've noticed particularly when I'm doing like meditation circles online and Zoom, and especially when I'm with other spiritual seekers, people who care about their own spiritual growth. I notice how very often when people are talking about their perspective, they'll use the pronouns you or we. Now, when it comes to the Wayshowers College programs, one of the things that I was taught when I was in the course is that whenever I would share, and this is a common thing across the board, if you ever attend, any course with the Wayshowers College, and you'll learn that a lot of people who are part of the organization that take classes, courses, and stuff, and that when sharing is the big aspects of the group meditations, the group work that we do when we come together, when we work on ourselves, but then we have opportunities to learn from other people and what they share. And I remember it was suggested to me to always to speak in the I when I'm talking about whatever my thoughts and feelings are, and to avoid using you, we, which which is the thing that I noticed when in one of my meditation groups with Astro Soul group work that I'm involved in. You know, I noticed a lot of them say you and this when they're sharing their perspective. And to me, it's not a judgment thing; it's more of a misalignment thing. And for me, I'm at this place, even when it comes to content creation, especially when I share, my perspective, I'm always making sure that I say I for the most part. I don't know if it's something you've noticed, especially with these my podcasts that I release every week. I always try to stay true to just saying I for the most part. Of course, there might be segments when I say you, and I'm being intentional there. I'm not trying to just caught. I'm not carelessly just throwing that out and about like that, which I feel like a lot of people do. Again, not a judgment thing, just an awareness thing. Because I've come to understand, and I take very serious that when I share my perspective, I know when I share my thoughts and opinions, they're mine. I'm owning up to it. Like, this is what I think and feel, rather than saying, oh, this is what you think you should feel, or this, right, this is what you're supposed to do. Because that's where it can kind of get into when if I ever used you unintentionally, then that really just that it's a subtle way of really projecting a lot. I mean, really, when I share, regardless of whether I use you or I, we all project. There's just like this interaction with the universe where it's like a mirror effect. So, what people say really does says a lot about themselves, even if they're commenting on someone else. It can it can give some information about that person and where they're at. Much like how, for example, what you see in another person that may stimulate you, for better or for worse, the good or bad, you have that to some degree within yourself. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to recognize it. There wouldn't be some familiarity with it. So, speaking in the I is a very important thing that I practice when I'm sharing. Like I said, especially when it comes to content creation and stuff, because I think that it's more authentic and more sound. And again, it just like it honors, like, this is what I think and feel. And just owning up to that, taking that on, like, this is what, and it could really, and it could really say a lot, and it has for me, in terms of like what it reveals about where I'm at, what are my concepts about X, Y, and Z about myself or any other of my relationships. It can give very important clues. That's why sometimes I've had some value when I've had to journal on occasions where I use a voice recorder. If I want to share something that's on my mind, of course I would sit in the I. I'll use the I pronoun, uh, and that helps me kind of tune into what's going on when I listen back on it, just to kind of get that outside perspective. Just hear myself talk, but recording it really can create an opportunity to build greater awareness. So when I speak in the I, as again, it's just like I'm taking in a lot of ways too. It's like I said, taking responsibility for what I believe, and also recognizing that I can't speak for other people. I can't speak for you. Why? Because we have freedom, we have our own agency, our own autonomy, we have our own lives. And so I can't speak for you. Now, I am a firm believer in advocating, right? And I believe that people can advocate for someone else provided that there's consent. There's that consent. It's mutual, right? And mind you, I in my work environment, I've definitely tapped into that and relied on my colleagues, my manager to help advocate for me on certain stuff that I was dealing with. And this is like communication 101, you know, why I think it's a really important, and what I believe it's what it takes to have balance in communication. So nothing wrong there, right? So I think that there's a good distinction or something to I want to shed some light on, some awareness to have. So there's nothing wrong with somebody advocating for an individual, and sometimes that's necessary. But when it comes to perspective, when it comes to how I think and feel, I can never put that responsibility on somebody else, because by default that is my responsibility to myself. That is what it means to be a free soul with agency, with freedom. It's like I'm occupying the space physically but energetically just as much as you are. And we have our wants and needs. And especially on talking about wants and needs, I need to, and kind of tying in when I mentioned advocacy, at least I want to get to the spiritual aspect to it, not the activism aspect to it. Just to be clear here, I want to get into the spiritual, the personal aspect of this. Meaning, I'm saying that to just say to speak for, right? Like, it's okay that people can speak for me, and if I speak for the people, like I said, it's provided that it's mutual, there's that consent. But at the end of the day, when it comes to how I think and feel, I'm the only person that can speak for myself, and I must be the one to speak for myself, tying in the wants and needs, because I need to do that for my own wants and needs. If I don't establish to the universe what it is that I want, what makes me think I can manifest it in my life? If I don't establish first and make it super crystal clear what it is I want. And of course, speaking for myself when I need to address my needs. Take, for example, I know for myself, one simple, ordinary day example is the bathroom, you know? And yeah, I remember I was like, I remember this kind of came up for me when I was doing a social ride recently. And I remember like my bladder was just filling up so quick. I don't know what happens sometimes, but it does. And I remember it was like hundreds and hundreds, like it was like 1,000 plus people, mind you, all on bicycles coming together, meeting at this park, and then we're all going together in this one big worm or snake type of thing. We're going to we usually have like an end point, but then also a midpoint where we take a break. And so prior to like getting to the midpoint, I was like needing to use the bathroom again. And I was like, shoot, what am I gonna do? And I was just thinking about maybe I can go by an alley where we were just passing through, and then just and then hopefully I can catch up with them. And I thought, nah, I'm gonna just hold it in, and I don't want to miss the group ride. Even though with a ride this big, typically like if you were to be at the front and wait to the end of the tail end of the group ride to come through, speaking on 1,000 plus people, you probably have to wait like 10 minutes. And so looking back, like I probably could have taken that chance, but instead I decided to just find some spot at the midpoint to use the restroom. So I kind of waited. But for me, it's interesting where I'm at when it comes to that the need to use the restroom, right? The common need that we all have, but it also speaks on the spiritual reality, spiritual truth that we have that need to fulfill within ourselves. We can't we can't escape that. We have to face that. Oh, sorry. Let me I caught myself. I have to face that. I have to you see what I mean when I said we again, I'm I'm being intentional, right? But then I know this is an area where I can say myself. I'm speaking for myself, right? And I just caught myself for a moment. But I guess that I bring that up now. I'm addressing that now just to say how very easy and how subtle it can happen, right? We. I'm like I mean me. Speaking for myself here. So I just wanted to kind of uh, interrupt my little sharing there to kind of bring that up and what just happened there. So when it comes to my needs, I have to be the one to be able to speak for myself when it comes to my needs, because if not me, then who else? And I can't live my life having to rely on something outside of me, on someone outside of me to address my wants and needs. Again, like I have to do that. I can't do that for you, but as I mentioned before, but there is the nuance. But I do believe in advocacy, especially when it comes to group dynamics. It can be very essential and helpful at times. Like I know it has been for me. Like I said, I've tapped into that. But the main thing I wanted to talk about here is to have balance in my communication. Just to have that balance, right? Just know knowing when to lean on others for support, not relying or over relying, but then staying true to my own autonomy and relying on myself in my communication, being able to speak for myself. This is one, personally for me, one of the things that's been like a life endeavor and a theme for me is finding my voice, and like really speaking up for what I believe in. That right there, I know one of my spirit guides helps me out in that particular area of my life to be able to speak up for what I believe in, speak up for what I want and need with other people, all respectfully, of course, not trying to impose or anything like that. I think we all have a right to do that because I remember I was sharing another video about the importance of taking up space, because that's something that's come up for me. Is like when I'm speaking, like the thought of even just to speak up for myself, to advocate for myself, I get this guilt within myself, as the same guilt that I feel ashamed of taking up space. But here's the thing, you and I are here. By default, we take up space. So why feel ashamed or sorry for taking up space? Why feel ashamed or sorry for speaking up for yourself? And then this is where I'm bringing up the programming for myself and what's come up in my life that would constrict my communication, my relating chakra, the throat chakra with other people. And that's something that's very fundamental, basic, and essential when it comes to like self care, when it comes to working on that relationship with myself, in my opportunities, in my relationships to other people, right? There's this give and take that happens. The way I believe it really does need to happen. The moment it becomes more than 50-50, if it's not 50-50 with people, then that's not balance, you know. And I don't mean 50-50 meaning going half, like doing 50%. Is meaning doing 100%, giving it my all of my part, 50-50. much like how I see my relationship with my guidance, that partnership, how I see my relationship with God, and what I believe that our relationships are partnerships, not this greater or lesser like hierarchy. Because I believe that we're all a part of spirit. We're all one with God. We are God. There is no separation. And one of the things that I find too, so coming back to like speaking in the eye, they actually have some techniques as well too, where we use our intuitive part, our psychic gifts, and one of the things one of the techniques that I've done in the past is called like the state of consciousness, where basically somebody shares either an area, a keyword, or something, and then the person listening will share on what that means to them. They internalize that. And then from there, the person who shared initially can write down some notes of what stood out to them from the other person that was sharing. And what's beautiful about this technique is like the person that initiates that shares their thing, their keyword or their area or whatever, right? They're just sharing from themselves. And the person that's responding, they're speaking from their selves. So it's like, when I'm in an environment, when I'm doing group work where everybody honors this, like they can only speak for themselves. They don't say you, they don't say we. When people speak from their own selves, that place of authenticity, and they're sharing on what they're going through in the group works that I'm involved in, because we're all share on like our own life stuff and what's going on, right? I find that I can relate with a lot of stuff that they say regardless. And plus, when I say I instead of you, it's less imposing. It's less of like trying to give advice. And I never try to like, I mean, if for me, I feel some type of way when it comes to advice because I don't want to come off as like some kind of guru. I'm just sharing what's worked for me at this stage of my life, right? And what I share with people, I always want to intend it as a suggestion, never as like a command or like you should do this. I'm never about that because people have the right to live their own life. People are have freedom. People are free. It really comes back to that. And so when I speak in the I, for me, it's like I'm honoring my freedom and I'm honoring your freedom. And so, and when I do that, like I said, I find that I can really, I can have that positive impact on other individuals, just like I know other people have for me when they're speaking for themselves and what they're going through. I'm like, man, I resonate with X, Y, and Z, what you said there. And I appreciate you sharing that because, in those instances, it really helps me get out of myself when I feel like I've gotten myself in a cubicle, the out of balance of getting too much into myself, and reminds me like, hey, there are other people that are going through stuff as well like me. You ever find yourself thinking that your problems, whatever you got going on, is just you? Like you have a copyright on that? Like it's just an exclusively a you problem and nobody else in this planet, in the billions and billions of people on this planet, no one else could possibly be dealing with the similar stuff that you are. Do you ever find yourself in that line of thinking? Because I know I do. That happens to me. Happens to me. So it's amazing just my intellect and the patterns, the tendencies and stuff like that. The narrow-minded way of thinking that can come about. It's crazy. So wherever you show up, whether it's a group setting, if it's personal, business, or social, wherever you are, whatever's going on, especially if you're talking to people, I highly encourage you to to practice that. If that's not something that you haven't paid attention to, well, I invite you to take some time, your next opportunity. If you're going to talk, maybe it's a loved one, family member, or a friend, and just as you're talking to your friend, being there 100%, right? And just also having an awareness of if you ever find yourself doing that, you, we, right? And just see what you notice. That I would suggest using that as an opportunity to kind of regroup with yourself, with your team, and open yourself up to insights from your spirit guides around this. I'm sure you'll be surprised as to what insights may come through. like I know for myself. Okay, so it's just a very interesting thing to do, but it's one of those things that's very subtle, and a lot of people, many people won't pay attention to it again because it's the awareness thing. But what we speak, the words and the words we speak can have energy to them, and I think the more I speak from my truth, my perspective, my lived experiences, sharing freely, not imposing, to me, that's just like I get this feeling and sense of having myself together, not feeling fragmented, not feeling like I'm speaking for something else. Because spiritually, you and I are sensitive. We pick up thoughts, feelings, energies of other people in our environments. And this is one of those really explaining more when if I don't speak in my in the I and I say you, that's a subtle way of taking on energy that or someone else's concepts or beliefs that aren't even mine. You know, have you ever considered and thought about that? Maybe like the stuff that you say, are they genuinely yours, or perhaps you told yourself you should adopt the concepts, the beliefs about whatever relationships, life, other people. Do you ever find yourself in that situation? And so practicing using I more often, I know, again, just a suggestion, you don't have to. I mean, it's really telling. And for me, I think it's just, I said it before and I'll say it again, it makes for more authentic communication. When I speak for myself, even if someone asks me bluntly, hey, I need some advice, you know, what I would, if someone were to ask me that, I would always frame it like this. Okay, this person's like, "Oh, I need help in this relationship situation with this colleague of mine. Any advice you'd give me?" And then I would always answer with like this. Okay, if I was in your shoes, working with that colleague, I would dot dot dot. Like that's a good way of reference, like that I would share with you. Like if you ever find yourself, if someone asks you for advice or something, rather than saying you should or you're supposed to, all this infringement on another person's autonomy, free will, instead go about it like, okay, what I would do in that situation is, and really internalize and take that on for a moment. What would you do? And trust that whatever you share from there, they'll get what they need from you. Because obviously, if someone asks you for advice and they're asking from your perspective, they're looking to you for something. So by default, you have the opportunity to be of service. And if you're being authentic by sharing I, me, right, what would I do in that situation? Then, like I said, in my experience, I find that as a byproduct, as a side effect, I help that person, right? Because otherwise, if I just say you, it's like I'm trying to give therapy. It's like I'm trying to be in that seat, but that's not the position I want to take. I'm not a not a therapist, you know. I consider myself just like an educator, sharing, leading by example. You know, that's part of the one of the big things I think when it comes to like all this to say is it's really learning about what it means to lead by example and inspiring people to change for themselves. Because if I say you, all this imposition, all this outer force to try to change, that's not sustainable. That's not practical. That won't work. Not in the long run. It's not going to work. And when it comes to things practical, that's really what I think part of what it means to live spiritually. Is what I'm doing working for me or working against me? Is it practical or not? Balance, right? Much different place, and then of course I would also add purpose, a lot of other things too. Um, but those are like the big encompassing things when it comes to that, to give you a greater perspective, my friend. So don't be afraid, no matter where you are, when it comes to working with people, because this is really when the context for all this, right, is when it comes to working with people, engaging, interacting with people. You know, You utilize your resources, right? I'm not, by saying speak, learning to advocate for yourself, doing that. I'm not saying you have to figure it all by yourself. You have to do it yourself. No, like lean in for sure to your support systems to help advocate, to speak for you in certain situations. Because and like I said, I've done it before. I've tapped into that, and I will tap into that because I know there'll be some points in time where it will be necessary, right? It's just don't forget. It's just I think for me, it's just don't over rely on other people when you have yourself, right? Don't force. Don't forsake. Don't give up your own autonomy for someone else because they have their own responsibility to themselves to do. You can imagine trying to impose your responsibility on somebody else. So that means that you're trying to give that because then that would mean they have the responsibility to themselves and then responsibility to you. And that's that's not that's not how it is spiritually, the way I see it, in my opinion. So it's like balancing, right? So lean into that support system for sure, but then also practicing being brave, having the courage to find your voice, right? Like I know for me, always practicing and learning to find my voice in various situations, and I know that how that comes up for me. I don't know if that comes up for you. I'm not saying it applies to you, but if it does, you know, lean into your support systems, and then I would suggest just working on practicing, speaking for yourself, you know, and even just like the example I mentioned of like the bathroom, it really says a lot about how we feel about addressing and speaking for our own needs. I know, like for me, it was really telling for me. It's just, and that's why I know for me, my guides, they give me chills very often in the back when I'm in the bathroom taking care of business, if you know what I mean. And one of the insights that kind of came to me, I think I got this message from them, was that the why they come close to me is like that reminder of to lead with the need, to always consider my needs in mind, because it is from there that I can honor and support someone else's needs as well. It works that way, inside out, not outside in. If I leave myself out, I won't be able to help somebody else take care of their needs, or I won't be able to help assist somebody take care of their needs. Does that make sense? It's like operating out of an empty cup. But I got to make sure I have my oxygen mask on before I can help the other person. Again, it just really boils down to practicality. So, again, I'll just leave it there. I thought I wanted to talk about this, because I think it's something really important, because this is one area where we have that responsibility to ourselves as we are navigating through life, navigating through the school. And, and if this resonates with you, I encourage you to share this and have this conversation with your friends, families, colleagues, because I think this is so important. So important when it comes to balancing my relationship with myself and my relationship with other people. It is a must. It is a must. And if there's no balance in the practice at all, then it's only going to create, what I want to say, it's only going to create tensions. It's going to create problems, issues, that at times may not even have been necessary. But sometimes, conflicts can, is necessary, situations there might be situations where disagreements happen, let's say. I don't want to say conflicts because that sounds very aggressive. Disagreements. Disagreements are okay and natural. I think is how working with the disagreements, I think, it makes all the difference. So I'll just to speak on that piece. But anyway, I feel like I'm going on here, and I think it's a good point to wrap it up here in this episode. So yeah, so I invite you to just check it out, to think about that, reflect on any of that stuff that's come up. Again, just a suggestion, not a command. I can't push a button to tell you what to do. That's not how life works. And so I hope this is inspired, or gave you something to think about. And I appreciate you for staying at this point in the episode, if you made it this far. So this has been another episode of Spirit Engineered. I'm your host, Alvin Cepeda, signing out. And as always, take care, my dear friend.